And this is the Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission. We have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner Nacita?
Here.
Commissioner Roth? Here. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Yates?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
Commissioner Edgar?
Here.
And Chair Walters.
Here. Okay. I guess we don't have any public comments today.
Not in a work session.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I guess we have just the Urban Renewal Electronic Forum discussion item.
You got something different. Oh, you're looking at
Ready to have your PowerPoint up? Okay, greetings, commissioners. As you know, we're here this evening to discuss the feasibility of a city listserv. The packet of materials that you received contains a memo from the city attorney on the subject and an email response between the city manager and also Commissioner Yates. It's the city attorney's opinion that the proposed electronic forum would be considered a public meeting, and it would be subject to a variety of requirements that would be difficult to accommodate. Commissioner Yates agreed that the listserv is probably a meeting under the open meetings law, but he does not believe that the law requirements would be difficult to accommodate. Commissioner Yates also states that the legal issues raised in this memo are easily dealt with and that the costs of the listserv are trivial. And as a result of reading all of that information, as the city's recorder, I would agree that the city attorney and commissioner agree with the attorney and Commissioner Yates that the listserv is not prohibited by the open meetings law. However, what I strongly disagree with is the contention that the legal issues are easily dealt with and that the costs are trivial. Because of Commissioner Yates' belief on these issues, I felt that there was likely just a lack of knowledge, sort of general knowledge, I'm not speaking directly to him, among the commission and the public in general, which could be my own fault of just not doing some training in records management. As such, I would like to give you a very brief Records Management 101 to you tonight to explain what happens when a record is first created, and as such, when, for instance, the first email in the listserv would be generated. So here in Oregon City, of all places, you must have an understanding of our past in order to understand and appreciate our present. And such is the case with the history of records management here in the city. So bear with me for a few minutes while I give you some history of the last 5 years in this area. The progress of these 5 years will be like a showcase of the benefits of following the law. Back in 2007, we undertook this huge task of changing the organizational structure or culture of how records were managed. We took that was then and this is now approach to communicate that things would be different from here on out as far as the management of the records. My office developed a mission statement that reads, "The City Recorder's Office will provide ready access to public records to the citizen, the public servant, and the City Commission at the right time to the right person and at the right cost and for as long as is needed." And we all know that our records are a valuable asset to the city and they must be maintained with respect and according to state law. And this became our mission. When I first arrived in Oregon City, it took about 6 months to muster up the courage to even go out to the back where the containers were out back holding all of our records. And if you were here back then, you remember that they were all stored in a container in the parking lot. They were in an attic at Public Works. They were on any shelf, closet, cabinet, or corner. There was no central storage. Storage areas are not climate controlled. Staff was not trained. The historical records were actually at risk, and there was inadequate staff. And so after we implemented all that we did, there was electronic imaging and storage. There was a strategic plan that was developed. Retention schedules were followed. Staff was trained in records management. We conducted several annual Grateful Shred days according to retention schedules. Record liaisons were assigned from each department. We acquired off-site climate-controlled storage, and we obtained staff buy-in on policies and procedures. In fact, what I'd like to do is just give you a few photos that will give you an idea of where we were, and you need to understand this to appreciate where we are today. So this is a picture of the city's storage containers. This is where everything was stored, just about, that was not of immediate need. And this was the day that we had emptied them and they came to take the containers away. This is inside the containers. And I mean, just take a look. Yeah. Okay. These, let's see, where am I here? Oh, wait, I want to go back. When we reached the back of this container, we found 9 unopened boxes. And we didn't know exactly what they were, but they actually ended up containing 500 bottles of Oregon Trail wine by the Henry Enders Winery. They were 25 years old, and they were stored in the back of there for 25 years from a Westward Ho event. So the point of my saying this is just that this is where we were at, and we needed to make some changes.
Excuse me, Nancy.
Yeah.
I see that the lid's off of that now.
Well, it really wasn't wine anymore after 25 years, and it took some time to dump 25 bottles of wine, or 500 bottles of wine. This is a picture of someone's office space. There was no central storage, and things were just put wherever there was space to put them. This also is another picture, but despite the poor conditions, the staff maintained a high level of professional product and output, and we were certainly glad that we were able to develop a plan for records management, and of course very grateful for our new City Hall. And so 5 years later, all of the records were secured in storage. They were accessible, both on-site and off. State retention schedules are respected and followed. Staff is trained, and electronic imaging and storage systems are operating efficiently. In addition, we have met the City Commission's goal to increase communications with citizens and facilitate citizen participation via electronic video and media. And we web stream 9 different meeting bodies, including the URC, and maintain the verbatim record for all these meetings. So the city has accomplished a lot in the last few years to improve record, the life cycle of a record, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it all started with a plan, and it was the 5-year strategic plan where we outlined five different goals that we have actually met almost all of these goals, and it's now ending here in 2011, and we're working on the next 5-year plan at this point. So what does all this mean for a listserv? The main point that I'm trying to make is, by giving this history, is that the listserv is a public record and that it requires a well-organized and a highly maintained records management system to accommodate it. It also requires much more, which I'll be explaining in just a minute. But before we go there, I just need to define with you what a public record is. Even though we've already determined that the listserv would not be prohibited by the Open Meetings Law, But whether a listserv is a city meeting or a citizen-driven discussion operated by the city, the conversation is a public record and it must be maintained. The moment a listserv message is created, the life cycle of the record begins. So what is a public record? It includes, but is not limited to, a document, a book, paper, photograph file, sound recording, or machine-readable electronic record, regardless of physical form or characteristics, that is made, received, filed, or recorded in pursuance of law or in connection with the transaction of public business, whether or not confidential or restricted in use. Again, a listserv electronic discussion is a public record. So now that we've determined that fact, there's 5 different steps to the life cycle of a record. Creating the email in the listserv at the very beginning is the first step here, which is creation and receipt. It's then following the creation comes distribution of the information, which means that someone needs to monitor the discussion and analyze its distribution. A lot of questions come to mind at that point, like which staff person needs this information. What if false information is being circulated as fact? Who will be there to set the record straight and provide further facts to keep the discussion on track? The next step in the life cycle is the use of the record. So since the listserv is a public meeting, how will this information be transferred into minutes, staff reports, or packet attachments? How will it be used in the decision-making process? The next step is maintenance. In other words, staff is required to understand the retention schedules, to store the documents electronically, to upload them to the city's electronic storage system, and to retrieve them whenever anyone makes a request for those documents. And then, of course, the disposition at the end is if there's a retention that's permanent, it needs to be saved forever. So there's a cost to that as well. If there's a retention that's short-term, then there is a destruction process that's in place. So the city attorney, you have the memo there, and he concluded that the listserv would be considered a public meeting and is subject to the requirements that are currently beyond the scope of the city to implement and maintain. These are challenges that are statute-driven, and the first of his concerns is meetings must be held within the geographic boundaries over which the public body has jurisdiction, or at the administrative headquarters of the public body, or at the other nearest practical location. So it just brings to mind a lot of different questions. Would the city win over a complaint that there is no geographic location of a meeting for a citizen to attend if they did not own a computer? I mean, the questions could go on and on. Another concern that he had was an interpreter for the deaf or hard of hearing must be provided.
Can I interrupt? This is written material, not auditory. This is not audible stuff. We're talking about written documents.
Right.
You need an interpreter for the deaf, at least. You might need something for the sighted or somebody who doesn't speak English.
Okay.
But certainly not for deaf or hard of hearing.
The memo states that the URC must provide an interpreter for the listserv 24 hours a day, whether it's deaf or whatever the disability might be.
It could be blind.
Right, exactly. Or physically handicapped in some way where they would have to get into a building to be able to reach the computer. I mean, there's all different types of disabilities that way. But the main question is, how would the URC approach that? How would they comply with it? Another concern is that notice must be provided for all meetings listing the subjects to be considered at the meeting. How would you notice a meeting that was 24/7, 365? How would the notice anticipate the principal subjects to be considered? Another is that a recording or written minutes of the meeting must be maintained and Commissioner Yates did address this in his email as well, that that we could just copy these off, but then that's the first part of the life cycle of the record, is just the creation of the document. So in that case, then it would go through the rest of those 5 steps. So if there's more to it, it's not a trivial matter. There's a lot more to just create after the record is created. It needs to be maintained, used, disposed, and so forth. And of course, just the cost to keep a document forever is there as well. And lastly, I think, when an electronic meeting is held, there shall be available a place where the public can listen to the communication at the time it occurs by means of speakers or other devices. So does this mean that the city would be required to provide an accessible computer kiosk? How would this be accomplished? Would a staff member be required to be at City Hall day and night to staff the kiosk? Again, we're trying to put something into the law that is electronic in nature when the law was created before all this even occurred. My biggest concern is that we're trying to do something that is beyond our ability to manage in a constructive way. If the law was changed, and I believe that there's talk, I've heard talk of changing the law to allow these types of forums, then we would be able to work that into our work plan. But at this point in time, the constraints are there that keeps us from being able to do that. And last is the Oregon Constitution's free speech clause may have impact on the URC's ability to control what can be discussed on the listserv and who could discuss it. The city attorney states that the censorship question is too thorny and should be addressed before such a concept can move forward. But above all else, and it's really no secret, that I am recommending that the URC refrain from implementing the listserv due to the challenges of complying with open meetings laws, with records management costs, staffing issues, and most importantly, the high risk concerns. So, and I am aware of the legal requirements and the challenges that would create too high of a liability for the city, and I would be remiss to not warn you of this concern. That's my presentation. We are here to discuss it. I wanted to give a real clear indication of where staff stands on this matter. It's a very strong stand, and I would like to open it up for questions and comments.
Just wondering if you would research whether any public bodies in Oregon have tried to implement listserv or not.
I'm only aware of one that tried it, and it was Wilsonville about 10 years ago, and it was closed down for lack of, it became an issue with what was being discussed on the site. It wasn't actually a listserv. It was more like, you might know more about it. It was more like an online discussion on their website, but it wasn't working, and they closed it down.
Go ahead.
I'm on a body, transportation body that's doing the Clackamas County 20-year transportation plan, and we're interacting on web discussions all over the place with 20 people, and there's probably 20 or 30 emails a day just on this coming back and forth. And this is an official body of Clackamas County, and we're doing the official 20-year plan, transportation plan, and boy, they don't have any trouble with it. And we're talking back and forth about a lot of critical issues, and it's along the line of what Phil has always been saying he'd like to have, is just the ability to discuss, bring the stuff up out in front of people, and it's been very creative and very productive, and it's happening right with Clackamas County right now, and we've got a county commissioner sitting right with our body, and it's no holds barred.
I'm not aware of it, so I can't really comment on it. The county is, if it's as you say, the county was likely opening itself up to a lot of risk. I don't know if it's a formal meeting that they are conducting, or if it becomes a part of their record. I mean, I don't know how to comment on that. The other comment I do have, though, is that the county is staffed in a lot of different ways, and in my office, it's Kelly and me, and we don't even have urban renewal staff, other than we have an economic development manager coming on board, but we don't have urban renewal staff. And so to add something like this to our already large workload, I mean, I have a list of things at my desk that I'm just not able to get to that, for instance, taking care of all the city's historic artifacts and its historical type records from a long, long time ago. I mean, they're sitting there just waiting for us to have staff to be able to do something with all those. I just think that the priority of this is very low at this point in time, as well as the staff constraints.
I think Commissioner Shaw was before you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You've mentioned the liability of the city, but us, the individual members here, have assumed some liability just being on this commission, and I believe this would even have more liability to us personally via our computers or whatever when these little forums take place, I think.
I think just the reverse.
Well, that's what I don't know, Phil. I'm just going to ask this question, is that how much more liability is there going to be on us individually? And this could even go towards how hard it's going to be to get individuals to sign up for these commissions when there's actually possibly going to be more liability. So if you could respond.
Well, as I understand it, the big issue for people on committees like this when they write emails is that when you're writing emails they're all public records, even if they're not part of a listserv. If I write Doug an email, if I write you an email, it becomes a public record. And then if you and I have been writing emails with each other for 6 months or two or 3 years, ultimately litigation ensues, and somebody comes and says, I want to see your hard drive, because
Yes.
I'm not sure you've given me all the. If instead all the communications are through this listserv, and you can testify, sign an affidavit to the judge when you get a subpoena for your hard drive, which you don't want to provide, you can say by affidavit, I never sent an email to anybody on that committee that didn't go through the listserv. So they're all right there, easy for you to see. So in my opinion, there may be other liabilities that I'm not aware of.
It's on.
But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can perceive at least, the reduction on your exposure to the liability of having your hard disk disclosed to somebody through some litigation is diminished, not increased.
Shifted to
I
the
don't
city.
know any other liability there is with respect to creating public documents and communications for people besides that.
But if, without listserv, right now we just have this small forum of emails between us that are going on right now. But with listserv, there's going to be more of that.
But it will all be public, so there won't be any reason to come after you for anything, because everything that you've done, assuming you can say truthfully, I've never sent an email to another commission member except through the listserv, then there would be no reason for anybody to look at, as long as I believe you, there would be no reason for anybody to look at your hard drive. So there may be some other liability with respect to communications, like I said, that I'm not aware of. At least as far as that one goes, this solves that problem. It actually reduces your exposure rather than increases it.
I guess I'm a little curious why other jurisdictions, municipalities aren't using this.
Can I think I can.
Phil,
Yes.
Phil, before you go on, it may reduce the individuals. Right now, individuals have a responsibility to maintain their own records first and turn them over, in fact, if they're asked for. To the extent that it reduces your liability, I think what Nancy's point is, it's going to that risk is going to be shifted to the city, or in this case, the Urban Renewal Commission, and staff is going to have to maintain the record that you would have.
But as far as his point was, that individuals become more at risk.
Right.
I just think it's just the reverse. If I could, I'd like to go through the list that you created, because I respond to each one of those. I really don't. First, I'd like to go through So you went through 5 things about the creation of the life cycle of this. Remember, these are emails.
Right.
They're created by under this thing. They would be created not by anybody on staff. They'd be created by us, essentially. The emails would be created by us. So there's no burden on the city for that. The distribution, as far as I can see, was completely automated. People who sign up for the listserv receive it. People who don't sign up for the listserv don't receive it. It's totally automated. So that's the first 2. There's no cost.
Phil, do we want to do this back and forth now, or you want to get to the end of your list?
Well, go ahead. Sure.
Well, because when you said there won't be anybody from any staff doing that, if you have an Urban Renewal Commission online 24/7 meeting, if you want access and use and input from your staff, then there is going to be. Oh, then there is going to be.
But the staff would sign up.
I'm not going to be on there at midnight, but I'm probably going to be on there somewhere.
But the distribution, in terms of a burden on the staff to create the distribution's all automated. There's no time constraint, no time burden on the staff, no staffing burden for doing that. It seems to me, at least. Am I wrong? What would be the distribution cost?
Well, the distribution is if there was added information to a particular topic that you're discussing, then it would have to be put into a packet format.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about
whatever
sending emails
whatever topic that you're discussing on the listserv. It would be a topic that apparently is of interest to the Urban Renewal Commission, or an item on your agenda or something.
It have to be. I think
Right.
It should be on the agenda.
Right, and then that, just like any other topic that you talk about, all that background material, it would all become part of the
Background material.
Well, even just for tonight's meeting, you have on your monitors there some attachments. It would need to be distributed to the commission in some format. Yes, in this case, it's electronic, but there's all those processes of moving it from point A to point B, and then...
If I could, with respect, it seems to me that I'm talking about just emails, no attachments to the emails, because I think we need to have restrictions on these
Right,
things for these
okay.
reasons. I do agree that there are issues that you can deal with, but the solutions seem to me to be so simple. We've got a automated system that distributes it. You've got a staff, you've got members, citizens who create it. I don't see any cost to the city.
Well, that's where you're mistaken, because it takes time, and it takes hard copies have to be printed out and kept, because the law requires that we do that, because this becomes a permanent record, and all permanent records have to be kept in hard copy.
There is that cost to print it out.
So there's that. Then there is the cost of adding it to an agenda and keeping and
Adding what to the agenda?
Whatever the discussion is.
The
So
listserv.
let's say we're going to talk about the Cove on the listserv. If I didn't go through and look at all the emails on the listserv, then it would be up to staff to give me that information.
Well, it would be required to add it to a packet and present it. If it was let's say it was a Cove discussion, and you were going to be discussing it, and then all that discussion would become part of the record for the
It would
Cove.
certainly become part of the record,
Right.
and you would have to print them out. I don't know that you would have to distribute in any other way besides electronically.
Well, if you were
You
going to
still
be
have to
making
move it
decisions
over.
based on whatever the topic is, then that would become part of that agenda item. Yes, it would. It would
It would be part of the record,
Right.
but it'd be an electronic record, but the distribution of it itself would be, it seems to me, automated, except for the printing it out for your records. In terms of
If you understood how documents get from point A to point to you, then you might
but they're getting
agree
to
with
us
me.
through the listserv. They're getting to us on our at home
Yes,
in our
but the
our
public
offices.
needs to see that as well. If it becomes a part of the record, then it has to be attached to the agenda and put out on our website like all other agenda packets.
And the public
Yeah.
would be able to go onto the listserv website and see it all anytime they wanted to. It'd be right there. Just to kind of go through these other things, the use of these emails that we're sending back to each other is to educate and elucidate and hopefully reach consensus on more things.
I would say on a given topic, somehow that has to be assembled so that all emails related to that topic can be directly accessed. That is, it has to be attached in such a way
There's no
that-
obligation to do that.
Well, if it's only a
There is.
I think what she's saying is.
That's
there
what I'm
is.
saying. There is the obligation to do that. If you have an agenda item, you have to gather all that information that's related to that topic and submit it on the agenda packet. And then that's distributed to the public and the commission, and then it becomes a part of the record. I can show you all the hard copies for every agenda packet you have ever seen for the Urban Renewal Commission. back to the very beginning.
I've never seen or heard that you had to take all our comments that we make up here and categorize them by agenda item.
Well, that's just because it becomes part of the minutes. I mean, your comments become
And
part
would
of the
these
minutes.
emails that we send to each other become part of the minutes? I think I don't think this is an issue that is a realistically serious issue. You can create issues if you want to stop something, but I really don't believe this is a legitimate issue. I'm sorry, I really don't. I just with respect.
Phil, are you in a place where can you yield a little bit of time for me to say something? Okay. Well, because I mean, I'm just trying to step back from this a little ways, and it's a really interesting debate. But when I think about the purpose and intent overall of this open meetings law, I'm not thinking about us policy wonks that do this for a living. I'm talking about the people that are staying at home, that are counting on us to come here and do this job and do what we do, and they may never come to a meeting. And my concern is that in the online deliberation that would occur, whatever time of day it occurred, the biggest problem I see, or one of the bigger problems, besides all these operational ones, is how is that person going to know that discussion isn't going to morph into something that they might care about? And that's the whole reason we publish these agendas, produce packets, have meeting places like this for people who, I don't think Tom's got anything on the agenda tonight, but he's here because he's generally interested. But the whole purpose of this, and I think the reason we have liability, we have exposure, is if that online discussion comes up and it morphs into some place that none of us anticipated it going, and that person at home is saying, so they're going to put a road through my property. Had I known that was going to be deliberated, I would have been there. But I didn't have notice because I wasn't there at that time, at that particular night, that those commissioners were deliberating this online.
But I think you're assuming that we're going to be taking votes and doing deliberations online, and all I'm talking about doing is having discussions.
No, it doesn't matter, Phil. For purposes of the law, you're deliberating toward a decision.
Right.
It's a meeting, and it's a meeting,
It is a meeting.
and people have a right to have notice of the particular subjects that are going to be discussed, so that they can be there to participate or defend their rights and all of that.
I don't really disagree with any of that. I have a question for you, though. These emails, right now we do some limited email communications. I got several emails from Jim. I got an email from you. What do you do with those? How do you print those out? And do you because basically you keep all. That's basically what we're talking about. We're already doing some email communication, and then every once in a while a staff member will say, "You can't do that. You're having a meeting," and in fact we are. But the public doesn't get to see them because it's not part of a listserv. Unless you're on the distribution list, the public doesn't see it. I'd like to have the public see all these things that we send to each other. It seems to me that all of these issues that you've described, in fact, are relatively easy to deal with if there was a desire to do so. My vision for this thing is to use it to create the ability for us as a group to reach consensus on items that we can't reach consensus on otherwise because there's not enough time, we're running out of time now, to discuss these things. My experience with this thing in Wilsonville, which did work really, really well for a couple of years before it kind of got off the tracks, was the most useful communication tool I've ever seen for local government. It may not work now. My vision for it would be that it would work. If it doesn't work, that's life. But I think the risks are so small of anybody bothering to sue over something like this. And if they did, I just can't imagine a judge ruling against us if what we're trying to do is make it more open and have these communications to be more available to people rather than less, which is really what my vision is to have more people get engaged in these things, not less. But really, one message I really want to give, though. If there's no consensus on this body to do it, then we shouldn't do it. Because if it's just, me and Jim and Paul and Rocky talking about it, and the people who are on the other side of many of these issues don't bother to engage, it's not going to be useful. This thing has to have Betty involved in it, and the mayor, and hopefully David, and then we could maybe have some, and with rules that don't allow, really, really long missives, don't allow off-topic type stuff.
And false information given?
False information. I can make falsehoods here orally, and you can call me on it. If you make a falsehood in writing, I'll call you on it.
Maybe.
I think that your desire for added communication is really a valid point, and I hope that you can see that we have worked really hard over the last several years to add more citizen participation and opportunities for communication with the public. It's just we've had great strides in that area, but I think that your desire for added communication, just more dialogue, is valid, and it's good. And I wish that we could truly see that happen. There's other options, though. For instance, we can approach the legislature. We can go that route, and it may take a while to do that, and I think that eventually it will happen, where they will change the law so that it will be easier for us to do this. Another alternative would be for us to hold Urban Renewal Commission meetings on another night.
Yeah,
Find,
that's what I was gonna say.
you want more time to talk. I mean, like you said, we're running out of time again tonight. Find another time where
night.
URC can meet, where you can talk till
Yeah.
midnight if you want.
Yeah.
And that way you don't have to have a listserv.
That's what I was saying.
You can just get all your talking out right at the
So
meeting.
much cheaper than that. If you were to count up the amount of man hours
Oh, yeah, democracy's not.
Well, it would also keep us out of court, and I think that's what our city attorney is. Why he gave the memo that he did and expressed his concerns, because he saw that the risk involved in such a listserv. But you're free to have those one-on-one meetings with each other, up at the restaurant or wherever.
As long as you don't have a quorum.
Yeah, right. So just as long as you don't have that quorum, and you watch out for the lessons that were learned in the Lane County, where they had these serial meetings going on, where you went around from person to person to person with the same information. Those are things that the law is telling us that we can't do right now.
And I'd like to come back to something I mentioned before, though. You brought up the Wilsonville thing, which I'm sure you're aware of because you were there. Did you actually try to search out other jurisdictions other than ones you might have known about ahead of time?
I sent out I'm on a city recorder listserv, and I sent out a message asking about it, and I only received one response.
Okay, so it went out to all the city recorders that you have on a list,
Right.
whether they've implemented, not only whether they're doing it, but whether they've implemented it in the past and had problems with it.
I believe I asked something similar to that,
Okay.
yeah. And I got one response from Wilsonville.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add one thing too. Is I'm on a public works listserv, and to tell you, I think you want to think about if you really want to do this from your inbox standpoint. I mean, you get stuff, and you're not interested, and you might have, all of this going on, and I just delete, and then am I responsible for reading all those, or? That's just.
Yes.
And did you delete the wrong one?
I literally
I
had
am
that.
saying it
Yeah.
does impact your inbox.
Yeah.
Yes.
And are you committed to communicating all of that?
The question for today then is, does the Urban Renewal Commission want to move forward further on this listserv?
How do we register that? Do we take a vote?
We can't take a vote.
We're in a work
We're
session.
not.
And really, I strongly believe, unless there's a consensus here to override staff's strong opposition, we shouldn't do it. Because if we're not going to use it, if everybody isn't interested in using it, it probably won't work. And we do need some rules. We definitely need some rules. In my response to this memo that our lawyer wrote, I do think we need some specific rules to deal with some of these issues. But I don't think that they're extremely difficult to do, and I don't think they're going to be extremely costful for the city, any more costful than taking Jim's emails and handling those the way you would. I just don't think that right now we're communicating now, and the public is not being informed.
There is a difference between an individual commissioner's email, direct email, and the listserv emails, though, however. But I wanted to point out one last thing, and it's on your screens there. Knowledge of the requirements of the open meeting law and failure to comply might constitute willful misconduct, and the potential for liability is high. And I just wanted to point that out to you, that I have a personal ethics requirement that I'm aware of the law, and as your recorder, there could be, if we went forward with this, in my opinion, I would be willfully, I would be having willful misconduct, simply because I know that the risk is high for this, and that's just a statement that I feel like I need to make.
I don't know if people are aware of it, but you are in fact a sworn official. Most of our staff aren't.
It's a charter position, yeah, required by the charter.
Yeah.
I wouldn't use it
I wouldn't
if
use
it
it.
existed.
Mm-mm.
I try to, I read all the emails that come for City Commission and Urban Renewal Commission, but most of them I don't reply to. Especially if it's discussing a certain topic that we're going to discuss in an open meeting, I just don't do it.
I like the idea, Phil, of trying to get the public involved somehow. But this is, it just seems like, even though it sounds simple, it still sounds pretty complicated here. So I probably wouldn't use it at this point but I'm interested if there's some other kind of form to do this with, because I think we're looking at some kind of transparency here more, and maybe there's another program to do that with.
It'd be complicated, but it would be nice, since we're web streaming live and so forth, if there was a mechanism where people who couldn't make the meeting, where they could actually go ahead and email comments while we are deliberating on a particular topic.
I think that'd be good.
That'd be really
And
cool.
I think
There is a program that actually our Granica system has. It's called e-comment, and it's not during a meeting, but there's a point earlier in the day before the meeting that it has to be cut off in order for us to get time to get it uploaded for you.
So there's
but
a
it's an excellent
because
system.
it's agenda specific for one thing. It's looking at the things that are being put forward and so forth, and that kind of mechanism I think would be very, very valuable to us all, to have the broader public comment within our meetings that we could probably accomplish.
I agree with that, and I would really like to have more public input. Given the staff's time constraints and budget constraints, I just don't see how that can work at this point.
It may be, but I think it's something we really ought to seriously
No, I
think
mean
about.
the other.
Oh, the other, yeah.
I think right now we've got to stay on target, and this is a point where I like Phil's deal. I know it can work. Personally, feel it can work, but it's we just don't have a comfort level where we can put our arms around it at this point and not put you in jeopardy, and we can't have that. Period.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so do we have anything further to discuss?
There's city manager's report. Did you have anything for city manager?
Just one thing, really. Chair Walters supplied me with a document at the last meeting that I think some of you have seen. It's a proposed new agenda-setting process, and I wanted to remind the commission that our new economic development manager, Eric Underwood, is starting tomorrow. After about a week that he settles in, we're going to develop for him, with my office, a work plan for the next year, which will probably be an evolving document, but basically we're going to have a work plan that he's going to be developing with me. And I guess my recommendation is to have Eric work with the commission on this agenda setting we may, it may be one of these things where we end up recommending two or three of you work together with him, but I think that should be a decision that you make from among yourselves who you would like to do that. And then you might also want to set some goals for how you're doing your agenda. We'll review how you're doing it now, how is it working, what's not working, and then so we can kind of know where you want to go before we actually go forward with a change in the policy. So that's all I have for my reports.
Thanks. I'm glad you brought it up because I was wondering about it. I do have some just clarifications on it that I could send. I drafted it in less than 10 minutes, so
Okay, great.
could use a little bit of clarification. But
Look forward to that.
if anybody has any comments that they want to submit, I guess they can send it to David or to Eric. How would you like to see those comments?
Oh, they can just send them to me and I'll get them to him. He's going to be a little bit inundated the first couple of weeks.
Okay.
Since we got a little time yet, I think, till we back till 7. I was wondering if Nancy could give us an update on the alley project or down to Main Streets and what's going on down there.
We don't have
Sure.
time.
We haven't started any of the alley projects yet. We did have to put in a bollard at the alley in the 800 block because it was part of a land use condition of approval for the building restoration that was adjacent to the alley. And so we haven't done any of the design work. We've just been buried in all of the other things we're doing down there. It looks like we're going to have a good window on Sunday or Monday to do the restriping downtown to make it two-way. We kind of lost that window. The contract was, the bids were open for the phase 2 of the Main Street sidewalks, and they'll be starting in January. And the contractor looks to be a good contractor, Nutter Corporation. And the bids came in slightly below the engineering estimate, which was good. Do you have any other questions?
Looks like the junk handle is proceeding.
Yeah, that's going really very, very well. Yes.
When are they going to put the new bridge in there? Is there a time frame for that?
It looks like there will be, the 4-day closure will be in March. And they have to give us, 60 days notice before they actually schedule it. And then we've got a fairly elaborate plan for when that takes place. Very, very elaborate public outreach campaign. And if you want a more, you'll probably be getting an update on that actually when we get nearer to it. And we had a tour of the jug handle project about 2 weeks ago. It was kind of last minute, and we invited the city commission, and actually I think it was maybe too last minute because only Betty, Mom, could make it. But we were going to do another tour when they actually have the bridge in its temporary location, and so I think it might be good to invite this body as well.
Okay.
History in the making.
If you'd like.
It was very good.
I'd like to, if I might, I've gone to a couple public meetings to talk about what was going to happen, both to the Molalla City Council and also the Beaver Creek Hamlet in terms of what was ultimately going to happen to the jug handle in terms of that closure.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and this may be part of your plan, somehow the information should go to every hamlet and we don't have any villages, we have hamlets and CPOs that really have main access to that.
I'll make sure of that. I'm pretty sure that if there's any way possible,
Yeah.
everyone in the region will know something about
Yeah,
closure.
okay, that's good. I want to make one.
Unless you never go
I'm
out.
sorry. I want to make one other comment about the two-way. The bicycles already know about it, and I've seen 3 bikes when I was driving one way going the opposite direction. Just letting you know.
I've always done that.
It wasn't so obvious to me before.
Did it look
right.
like Nancy?
Yeah. Speaking of bicycle.
We don't know what days in March.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We know it'll be a Friday through Monday, but that's,
Okay, I know the school district's strongly advocating for spring break.
we would like that too.
Okay.
Anything further? Okay. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.